How are we this morning? One of the shows that, if I've got nothing else to watch, then I turn this on occasionally, is Shark Tank. You ever seen it? Shark Tank. Basically, the show is investors, entrepreneurs, people who have made an invention come to this group of millionaires, billionaires, or whatever they are, and they pitch their idea of their invention, and they give them this whole pitch, and they have a demonstration, and then the investors have a chance to invest in the product, in the company. And you look at some of these inventions, right, and you think, okay, that's not that big of a deal. I could have thought of that, right? Like, why didn't I think of inventing this whatever it is? But they always have a big story behind it and why they ended up inventing it. And then if the millionaires like the invention and see potential for it, then they throw their money at it. And they throw thousands and thousands of dollars at these inventions and at these businesses every single week. And so the goal for each person bringing something is to show that they have something worth investing in, and then the millionaires invest in their company. I want to, if we can just push pause on Shark Tank for a minute, I want to recap the last couple months of this summer. Over this last summer, we've been working through some basics of what it looks like to follow Jesus personally and as a church. And so if you remember back in June, we started off looking at what it means to be a disciple. Jesus calls us to follow him, to be changed by him, and to join him in mission of making other disciples. And then we spent about 6 weeks in the middle of Acts chapter 2, actually the end of Acts chapter 2, where we talked about some foundational things of what the first church in Acts was about. And they were committed to being a church for everybody. And they were committing to following God, and they were committed to life change. They were committed to community with each other. They were committed to the church itself, and they were committed to glorifying God. And then last week, if you were here, we asked the question for ourselves, am I personally experiencing heart change? And so this morning, we're going to continue on. We're going to ask another question. And we're going to ask the question, am I invested? Am I invested? I want to take a moment here and just say thank you to many of you. Many of you have been a part of this church for many, many years. Many of you have been a part of this church through many transitions, many different seasons, many different rough patches, and many different high points. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your dedication here, for financially supporting God's church here at North Christian as we continue to grow. Thank you for sticking with us through this transition over the last few months as well. And so understand this message this morning, it's not challenging your commitment level. You have shown to be faithful in your commitment to God's church. But I want to take that a step further. I want to maybe take it and put boots on it and make it a little practical and ask the question, are we invested and involved here at North Christian? Or are we just showing up every week, as important as that is, are we just showing up every week and taking in for ourselves? I want us to move beyond that and put some legs on our participation. My question to each of us and myself is, what are we actively doing, and how are we influencing change in other people? We're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 20 this morning. If you want to turn there, the last part of Matthew chapter 20, if you have your Bibles. Jesus and his followers here are making their way from Jericho down to Jerusalem for the Passover feast. And as they're leaving Jericho, a large crowd is following them. It might even be a parade-type gathering is kind of following Jesus and around him. And they come across these two guys sitting on the side of the road. These two guys are blind, and they're beggars. And so what they do is they just sit on the side of the road asking for handouts and whatnot. And they have an interaction with Jesus during this time that we're going to look at. And so we're going to start in verse 28 and go through the end of the chapter. It says this, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many. And as they were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed them. There were 2 blind men sitting on the road. And when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd told them to keep quiet, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." Jesus stopped, called them, and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Lord," they said to him, "open our eyes." Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes. Immediately they could see, and they followed him. It would be easy to separate verse 28 from this, but I don't think that's fair for who Jesus is. Verse 28 sums up who Jesus really is. Jesus came to the earth to serve others and not to do anything, to gain anything of it. He came to serve. And so it's important that we leave that attached to this section. And so Jesus is making his way along the road, and these men hear who is coming by, and they had obviously heard of Jesus before. And so they cry out for Jesus. They shout out, and the crowd is trying to not disturb Jesus, and so they try and hush him up a little bit and make him be quiet. But this obviously doesn't stop them, right? And so they cry out even more, "Lord, have mercy on us." And what Jesus here begins to show us are some basic principles in what it looks like for us to invest in others. And the first thing is this, in verse 32, it says, Jesus stopped. Jesus stopped. This is so simple, and yet so many times I think we miss this. Jesus stopped what he was doing. He stopped making his way along the road, and he allowed himself to see the people that were in need. He stopped and he gave them attention. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. He had other tasks on his agenda. He had other places to go, and yet he still stopped. He made time for these men who needed him. Our pace in life that we create for ourselves is so fast sometimes that we miss things. We miss ministry opportunities. They just roll on by us because we are so busy sometimes in our lives. We fly by seeing the needs that are out there in the people that we encounter because we are so focused so much on getting to the next thing in our schedule, moving on to the next task or whatever it is, because we have so much going on and we don't look for what's happening around us. Church, we need to slow down. We need to stop sometimes and look around and see what ministry needs are around us. We need to allow our schedule to be interrupted. We need to stop and look for opportunities to invest in other people. The second thing Jesus did is he saw the big picture. He saw a bigger picture than just what was happening there. These 2 guys, blind beggars, they were not really recognized by society. They were not somebody that everybody would just stop and have a conversation with. Many people just passed them on by. And Jesus, he stopped and he had an interaction with these people. You didn't want to be in these people's position. They were completely dependent on the kindness of other people for their existence. They had no means of taking care of themselves, their physical needs, and so they relied on handouts from other people. And Jesus sees them and he hears them and he calls out to them. Jesus did not draw a line separating himself from anybody else in society. He did not think differently of them because of their social statuses or because of their disability. He didn't act differently because of who they were. We have been called, as Christians, we have been commanded by God to have the same mentality that Jesus did in verse 28 of this section. Not to be served, but to serve anyone who has a need. Paul says in Philippians 2, verse 3, not to consider ourselves as more important than others. The big picture of Christ that he's showing, this is much bigger than you or I. It's much bigger than our dreams or our desires. The big picture really is that all people are important to God. All people are important to Jesus. Jesus showed love to all people, all ages, all social standings, and all races. Anyone who calls on Jesus, he shows love to. And for us, we need to commit then to seeing the bigger picture in our life around us. We are attracted to people and activities that we like. But sometimes there are amazing ministry opportunities when we begin to rub shoulders with people that we would normally not. People who are not like us, who don't act like us and do the things that we like. We need to see the bigger picture around us. All people are important to Christ. And then the third thing Jesus did here was he served their need with compassion. He served their need with compassion. In verse 34, Jesus was moved with compassion and he healed them. He didn't do this for recognition, and he didn't really receive much from this probably anyway. He served these men because he loved them. They had a need and he had the ability to serve them, and so he served them with compassion. Investing in other people means serving regardless of what we get out of the deal. It means finding the needs and faithfully and compassionately serving people around us. It means not looking for approval or payment, but serving because our heart breaks for the people and the needs that we see around us. In Ephesians, God says that we are prepared for good work, or he has prepared good works for us in advance to complete. God has prepared good works in advance for us to complete. Do you believe that? Do you pray that every day of your life? Do you pray that God would show you the good things that he has planned for you to do today and give you the strength and the courage and wisdom to complete those works for God's glory, not for your own? Have you ever considered praying that for yourself? It's a little scary probably because that might mean that we lose control of our plans for that day. We might not end up getting done everything that we had decided to do or that we planned on doing for that day. Our day might look completely different from what we had thought if we pray, God, show me the plans that you have for me today. Are you willing to pray that prayer? Wilbur Reese, he said this. You may have heard this before. I would like to buy $3 of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, but just enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a snooze in the sunshine. I don't want enough of God to make me love a black man or pick beets with a migrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want warmth of the womb, not a new birth. I want a pound of eternal in a paper sack. I would like to buy $3 of God, please. So many times we want to have just our $3 of God be all we invest in people around us. We know that we're supposed to serve and we're supposed to look for ministry opportunities, but so many times we do that when it's convenient for us, not when it's needed around us. We understand that we should love others, and so we do it with people that we already love, that are easy for us to love. But Jesus says that if you love those who love you, what's the point in that? Anyone can do that. Jesus is calling you to love your enemies. He's calling you to love those who are different than you. He's calling you to love those that may upset you or frustrate you. And so we ask the question, are you invested here? It's like this. I'm a Nebraska Cornhuskers fan, if you didn't know that. There's like 5 of us in the state of Wyoming. But we're here. I was raised in Nebraska. I've been watching Nebraska football for as long as I can remember. I remember watching Tom Osborne's championship teams in the 90s. I remember watching the struggle through many coaching transitions through the 2000s, and I remember just a couple years ago hearing about this guy, Mike Riley, and thinking this might be a good thing for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. It might be what we need to start putting out championship teams again. I'm involved in the sense that I'm a fan. I watch their games. I read analysis, and I talk on Monday morning like I know how they should coach their team. I'm interested in what is happening, and I have an opinion about everything, but I'm not invested in the team. I don't send them money. I've never made it to a game. I'm simply a bystander that looks on from the outside that thinks he knows how to do things. I don't coach the team. I don't pick up after practice. I don't go around and recruit, and I don't bring orange slices to the teammates after the game. Jesus calls each one of us to move from being just involved to being invested. It's not just in church, but it's in people. We need people who are willing to invest in other people's lives around them. We need people to invest in the leaders here at this church. They need to hear support and encouragement. And we need prayers. We need people to invest in the leadership that way. We are a group of fallen men who struggle daily, hourly sometimes. And God has to sustain us. And so we need people to invest in leadership. We need people to invest in ministries that are here for you. These ministries are here for you to participate in ministry with other people that are in similar situations than you. We need people to invest in ministries that are here for somebody else. We need volunteers to step up and invest in the lives of other people in areas that maybe they would not normally. And we need people to invest in community and people around you wherever you may be, to the people you are in relationship with, to whom you can point towards Jesus. We need people to invest. And one way you can do that here, one practical way, is to get involved with ministries that need leaders and volunteers in order to continue on ministering to other people. To get involved with ministries that aren't currently functioning because no one will lead them and no one will serve in them. And if you want to know what some of those areas are, I invite you, please come talk to me after service or send me a text or hit me up on Facebook this week. I want to talk with you. I want to hear where God's leading you into service and into investing in other people's lives. But ministry is great and the workers are few. And so we need people to invest into ministries. Another way is that you can begin investing in others through care groups. Most of us take the summer off in care groups. Those should be starting to get organized now. We are creating material for you to use starting in September, and we're excited about that. And more information is coming on what that's going to look like. But you can start now by thinking through, who do you have in your life who needs to encounter Jesus? Who do you have in your life who you can point towards Jesus for an hour every week, who can be in a care group with you? You know, what we learn about the investors in Shark Tank is that they are all in with the people that they invest their money with. They just don't throw money at an invention or a business and walk away from it. They are invested in that business. They are on the ground in the business with the owner. They are giving ideas. They are helping get the product into stores. They are invested in the lives of these people. They are helping. They are answering questions. They are giving ideas. They are helping make this invention, this business, a success. Their investment is more than just sending money and signing a contract. And I'm thankful here for everyone who is committed to North Christian during this time over the years. Thank you for sticking with us and allowing us to work through what we have. But we have to take it to another step. We have to take it to another level. What will you be? Will you be invested instead of just being involved? Will you pray daily to God to reveal the good works that He has prepared in advance for you to do? Will you say that prayer? And then will you be faithful in whatever He leads you to? Will you take action when He reveals those plans to you? Will you slow down enough to see the needs that are around you? Will you see the big picture and serve those who come your way? And will you invest in others out of compassion for them? God is calling every one of us to invest in the lives around us. So how do you answer this question? Are you invested? God, I'm thankful for this church. Father, I'm thankful that this church is full of people who are committed to you, committed to remaining faithful to where you have called them to worship. And I pray that we each would examine our hearts and take it a step further and ask the question, God, what do you have planned for me? What are the good things that you have planned for my day, for my schedule? Father, the ministry is great around us, and you're calling all of us to be involved in ministry, to invest in other people, to stop for a minute and look at the needs around us, and then because of compassion, because of love for people, to get involved. And so, Father, for each of us, I pray that you would bring conviction on our hearts if needed, to open up time in our schedule in order to look for those opportunities to serve other people. Father, give us the strength and the wisdom and the courage to do this and to take that step and to ask that question and to say that prayer. It's in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.